So, the undead. Game development is weird. Picture Activision coming of its hype of the starting wave of the Call of Duty franchise, having basically the entire gaming industry by its balls, and being in development for World at War.
Let me provide some context. 2008 was weighted with high expectations, right? It's coming off the critically acclaimed Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare from Infinity Ward. And at the time, that game was by far and away the biggest game in our franchise that we had ever seen.
Then a group of developers comes up to their boss and is like, yo, we know we're doing this whole realistic first-person shooter thing here with accurate representation of guns, and that's like the whole image of Call of Duty, like that. But how about zombies? Like a lot of zombies. And on the rising wave of the Call of Duty empire, that still echoes in today's age in some ways, Activision allowed it. They tackled it onto the end like an Easter egg basically, but it was a creatively brave decision they made.
So let's review. We got a tough development. The team is working with new technology. We're behind schedule. The team is crunched. Late stage innovation, unapproved, unplanned, unscheduled, definitely ungreenlit work. Business expectations were for the best-selling game of the season, in an established franchise, and zombies at this point, they're clearly off-brand.
They did something creatively brave. Activision. The Activision we all know. Brave. Can you believe that? In this economy? I can't. And so Call of Duty Zombies was born. And people loved it.
And the reaction was overwhelming. Fans around the world loved it. They embraced it.
And I love it too. I mean, look at my playtime. Not of the look at my zombies. I'm embarrassed of that multiplayer playtime. But look at my zombies. I love that game. I'm telling you. And so Treyarch thought, well, what do we do now? And they got to developing Black Ops. And they did the zombie mode there, and the fans loved it. And so they started developing Black Ops 2. And that zombies game, Black Ops 2, is, to me, to this day, the best iteration of the zombie franchise in Call of Duty that we have ever gotten from them. Now, is that entirely subjective? Yeah, of course it is. But do you believe I'm making objective claims here? That I'm doing research? Okay. In this game, the zombies mode of Black Ops 2 is the only game from Call of Duty basically that I still boot up from time to time, because you will not get me to play one more minute of multiplayer. Over my dead body, but I'm fine with that then, because I don't have to play it. So to understand why the zombies games are so great, and in particular the Black Ops 2 zombies game, you really need to know the origin story of the zombies games. And I mean that in the real world, not the story origin. Because it is precisely what big franchise gaming, AAA games is most of the time not.
Okay, so it's great to be here with you to share our Without Borders story. It's a story of how zombies came into being. It's a story about how our studio has grown. It's a story about how we shed borders with our fans as developers. In 2008, some of you might know, we released a game called Call of Duty World at War. And it contained then a completely unknown unlock Easter egg, Zombies mode.
It was born out of a purely creative process, because there was no incentive. Nobody was demanding Activision to finally release a round-based survival gimmicky game mode of Call of Duty. Why would they? Or at least I don't know anyone who wanted that. If you do, please call this number between 2 and 4 p.m. only on weekdays, Fridays not included, because otherwise we're never going to get to a 4-day work week. The fans had no idea that would even be possible. Why would you do zombies in Call of Duty? I mean, it's strange.
Look, I understand how they felt. I mean, the fear of doing something so off such a successful brand is pretty much inconceivable. It was arguably irresponsible. But how could we walk away from something that was so much fun? We knew it was fun, and we thought so many people would enjoy it. We had to figure it out.
Right, now that the stage is set, I know, you know why zombies came into existence. Why do I think that Black Ops 2 is the best iteration of them? First things first, excuse me here, but I'm going to get real subjective here. But hear me out. It's fun. I know. Bold statement. The fun didn't primarily come from the gameplay though. I mean, if you really break it down to its core, it isn't even that good. Sure, the mechanics were good, but nothing felt that satisfying about it. And the gameplay loop consisted really of nothing more than shoot zombie, get money, buy better weapons, shoot more zombies, get even better weapons, perk up, and then you did that until you're dead. That was the entire gameplay loop. And around 20, 30 most of the time, you probably had everything, like all the perks, the best weapons, you've punched them, which just makes them better. And at that point, there wasn't anything to do but to survive. And that could be fun, but the gameplay wasn't inherently engaging, especially in those later stages of play. But I mean, it's not bad. It's just simple. And simple doesn't mean bad, exactly. It just means simple. Yeah. Staggering conclusion. The video could be over at this point. Simple doesn't have to be bad. Now, if you've been a zombies enjoyer for a long time, you might recognize that I left some objectives out here. A lot of Easter eggs and hidden objectives, if you will. And there is a reason for that. They aren't consistent over the maps, over the game modes, over the whole franchise in some ways, but they aren't really parts of the gameplay in that you have to actively go looking for them, not in the game itself, but basically all things that you did after you had all your weapons. You probably needed a second monitor to have the zombies wiki open to accomplish this. And I don't consider that part of the gameplay. Fight me? Actually don't. But really the point I want to get across here is that Black Ops 2 Zombies had the balance right. In that there were Easter eggs, but they weren't central to playing the game, and at the same time you could reasonably do those Easter eggs. Unlike later Zombies games where you needed to play for like 6 hours at times, and really only if you actually accomplished it first try, which you wouldn't, because it's insane. There's like a compilation on YouTube, not a compilation, like whole take on all zombies games, the whole story, like 2 hours long, with every Easter egg in all the games, and it's insane. It is absolutely insane. And Black Ops 2 really didn't have that kind of insane. They were hard, but they were fun, and you didn't really need a wiki, like having that open. It was helpful, but you could remember most things by heart. And that is a huge difference to like the last few iterations of zombies in the latest Call of Duty games, really. What I'm saying here is there is a market for games where you need your wiki open like all the time. That market just isn't me. Did you hear that, capitalism? You can't have me, I'm not a market. But running around Alcatraz, collecting the gas to board the plane to go to the Golden Gate Bridge and punch your weapons and then do it again and again, and then getting your tomahawk and then turning it blue, that was fun, and it was just that perfect point where it was not too complicated, because the tomahawk thing, to get it blue, you had to throw your tomahawk in 6-7 positions on the map. Then you had to do some other stuff, but that's really besides the point here. The positions were fully random. There isn't any information that that's even possible, and the places aren't like, oh yeah, that looks like
What is that?
maybe an objective. No, they're just fully random. It wasn't basically a thing you could figure out. You had to just get told by someone where the spots are, or you needed to read a guide, watch a video. But yeah, we all know that blue is better than orange, so really what I'm getting at is the tomahawk Easter egg turning it blue. If you did it a few times, you could remember that by heart. In later games, you could not remember the Easter eggs by heart. I mean, you could, but at that point you had probably over 200 hours. And read the wiki and watched YouTube videos and. Now you may be asking yourself, but if you've done all that stuff, what's there left to do? And really, at that point, the game becomes something different. Because when you've got all your perks, you got all your weapons, and maybe you even have completed all the Easter eggs, then the game just becomes surviving. And really, at that point, you have hordes of zombies, really big hordes, and the game becomes more of a strategy at that point, because you just have to figure out, stay in one place, or what's more popular, circle around and collect the zombies until you mow them down. And that is actually kind of a meditative state, if you will. Maybe you survived 60 rounds and you just want to survive 61, and then you figure out the best strategy to get there. But really, in the beginning, you probably die before that, because there's always some situation you haven't thought about, run in, and then you're probably dead. trust me, happens way too often. So when you get to the point where you're in that stage of the game where you basically have done everything, your playtime is probably already beyond what most AAA campaign-only games have of playtime. And really, if you're just stop playing the game at that point, you still had some value there, some great experience. And to get back to the point of running around and amassing zombies behind you, really at that point, if not meditating, because you need to know the best routes and whatever, it becomes a game of strategy at that point, not of tactics or aim skill in that matter. You need to have the best strategy to know where zombies could come from, to know where's the best place to run when you're in a ditch. The game fundamentally really changes its gameplay at that point. And some people liked that way of playing the game, the strategist approach, if you will. I never really did, but what just fascinated me about the game was its love for puzzle solving and the atmosphere that the game had, the fantastic storytelling and the story itself, because it wasn't a classic video game story, if you will. You probably all know what I'm talking about. You weren't just a badass with a heart of gold that didn't take the Geneva Convention that serious. You played a story that actually told something new. I guess if the zombie crowd, not the actual zombies, but the fans of the games, will find this video, they may have some objections here, but to me, that was just executed in the best way in Black Ops 2. And really, as the franchise carried on, the storytelling just got better and better, and it's a testament to how environmental and also just the storytelling, not in your face, but small increments, can work so well in a game. But I never really connected to the games after Black Ops 2 because it was more convoluted and it felt like watching a Marvel movie for the first time and not knowing anything about Marvel, and so you're just sitting there confused, and you can still enjoy the movie somewhat, but you also feel like you miss 90% of it. And Black Ops 2 didn't have that. You could just enjoy the game out of the box, and the only small story aspects that you couldn't understand if you hadn't played World at War and Black Ops 1, when weren't that many, it really made a difference. The games could just tell a story without really having a story. Really, there weren't campaign games, but had a better story than a lot of AAA, especially campaign-only games. But I digress. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was maybe just approaching 50 hours of playtime, and it was on my 15th playthrough of Alcatraz, maybe. And by then I thought I'd seen everything of the game, but really every time I played a new round, I could hear new lines from the characters. And I found new little details on some wall in the map. And it really fascinated me because the game on its surface doesn't look like it is that packed with detail. I mean, from having a robot bus driver that was also hallucinating and just very weird in general. On Alcatraz you have Alcatraz, but zombies, and the characters themselves don't know what's happening, to an old house with a witch in it that was in an old mine, with an old town that got buried down there. I think the map was actually called Buried. I know my stuff. And the humor, both in the world and from the characters, is something that I have yet to find in another game that has zombies, or in any media that has zombies in it for that matter. Because they just hit that perfect balance of not being over the top with it, and at that point where you couldn't take the story or the game serious anymore, but also having enough of it that you never felt it's too serious. And they really want to tell a story here about the zombies. It really was the perfect balance. The world was brimming with creativity. It was the rare moment in AAA gaming when developers cheated the system by creating something so fun and engaging before pitching the idea and having it survive long enough so the fans could come to love it. It was a bold creative decision, just with enough of a safety net for Activision in the midst of the Call of Duty hype to go along with it. It was not what the numbers said would generate more profit. It was just fun, and that was enough. Until Activision saw its success and someone at company name here had the idea that, well, if they can do that with zombies, then why don't we just do it with aliens? And they couldn't, and it wasn't good, because they didn't understand what made zombies fun. They didn't understand what made the players play the game. They didn't understand why to this day there's still an active zombies community for all the old games that are still playing it. And not only playing all iterations of the game, but filling forums and guides with information about the Easter eggs. They didn't understand it. It was the love for the game, for the details, for the world that the developers had built that made it have that impact on gaming history that it had.
So what are some of the possible takeaways you might have from this story? I think one of them definitely is, when the juice is worth the squeeze, follow the fun, even when it might seem to go against what you think you should be doing.
And I'm afraid we will never see Treyarch go back to that place, because the game was too successful. I have a new idea actually for my channel. You know that bit by Bob Burnham about the width of Pringles cans? Pringles, why don't you make them wider? It's a great special. Anyway, about my channel idea. ASMR. I mean, I'm not trying to come off as totally weird here, but peppermint tea and hot and spicy Pringles are the most underrated combo you have ever heard of, because you've never heard of it. And it's actually all right. It's not that bad. It's not amazing, but you've never heard of it, so unless you have, in that case, welcome to the club, I guess.